So as everyday people, we don't always have a chance to tell our story, to be heard, but everyone's got a story. And this is Linda's. Hello, Linda.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Linda.
You're welcome, Helen.
So firstly, your job title sounds fabulous. You are a therapeutic life story worker. That's right, isn't it?
I am, yes.
But there's certain life experiences that led you to that job. So tell us about that and then about what a therapeutic life story worker is.
Okay, so when I had my own child, I went back to university when she was a toddler. She was diagnosed with dyspraxia. And that affected her learning, her speech, her development, and she was really struggling and behind at school. So while doing my own studies, I went into her school to volunteer, to help and learn what they were, the strategies they were using in school to use at home. And I did that for a few years. And after I left university, I didn't want to be a teacher or a social worker, but I wanted to work with children. And that experience helped me to get a job in a high school working with disadvantaged and looked after children.
Yeah, so therapeutic life story work then, what is that?
So that was a long time in the making, gaining experience, working with children, understanding. Initially I thought education was, the best option for children, to give them choices when they were older to have positive outcomes. But I soon came to realise that trauma was a massive barrier, and working through trauma and understanding the trauma and helping others understand the trauma that they'd experienced was the best way to help them and to help them make positive choices.
Yeah, because I think in education, it's very much about your future, isn't it? Mm-hmm. About building for your future, what you're going to learn, so what you can do with that in the future. But actually, it's very important to look at our past, isn't it?
Very.
The things that have happened to us and how they affect our present. Mm-hmm. So tell us about that, why working with traumatic experiences is so important.
So understanding what's happened in the past. A lot of our children carry around a lot of blame and shame and don't often understand, what's happened to them, why they've ended up living with foster carers. And that causes lots of confusion, and that then comes out in behaviour. Behaviour is communication. And quite often they don't remember a lot of things that have happened. But, that brain development in the first 2 to 5 years is so important. And if there's been lots of chaos and if there's been abuse and neglect, then the way the brain is formed has been interrupted and changed. And they have certain behaviour traits and, so it's about helping them to understand that. It's helping the foster carers or the professionals around to understand everything that they've been through. It starts with me getting lots of, it's called the information bank. So the model that I follow is Richard Rose's therapeutic life story work. So I'll start with the information bank and I'll visit schools, previous foster carers that they've lived with, birth family, any significant people that have been involved in that child's life. I'll try and contact and build up a full story, because all our lives are made up of stories from different people. When you talk about your past, you'll ask your sisters and your brothers and your grandma, and and sometimes our children don't have that. Sometimes they're not in touch with family members, or even if they are, it's 6 times a year, and there's not much time to think about the past in those visits. So I'll get to meet them and get their stories and their backgrounds, because quite often what's happened to them is a direct link to how the children, how they parented and how the children ended up being taken away from them.
Yeah, and what sort of impact does this have on children then? What sort of positive sort of journeys do you see them go on?
So during with the life story work.
With the
so
work, yeah.
it's a long piece of work. It's a 9 months to 12 to 12 months piece of work. And they meet, and we include the really good thing about the difference between therapeutic life story work and the old-fashioned life story work is that the primary carer, the adoptive parent, if it's with somebody that's been adopted, or the primary foster carer, is involved in the sessions from the start. They're involved in the planning, and they're involved in the direct work as well. So we sit down, the three of us, with a roll of wallpaper. Richard Rose calls that relates to that as like the Bayeux tapestry. So each session is recorded on the roll of wallpaper, and we talk about, first of all, we build relationships through play lots of games. We talk about feelings, and then they will tell me their story from their memory, and we'll write all that down. And then as they're comfortable with me and they're comfortable with the routine, I'll then start to narrate the information from the information banks. And interspersed in that is lots of education around domestic violence, around drug and alcohol use. So while I'm doing the education around it, we then bring in like maybe the parents' past and how they come to be under the influence of drugs and alcohol, or of why they've struggled with relationships through their mental health because they didn't have great relationships and with their parents. Yeah. So it all starts to build a picture and fall into place for them. The young people that I've worked with, they two of them especially, one of them's about to go off to university, and he wasn't seeing his birth family, but he's now in touch with his birth family, and he's doing extremely well with that and managing that really well. It's had great outcomes so far, and it's recently the model, the Roses model of therapeutic life story work, has recently been evidence-based by a university in Australia. Wow. So there's been a pilot scheme, it's been looked at and researched, and it's been proved that it does work. It really does work.
So it's just sort of like being able to take everything sort of out of your head, put it all down, and just sort of understand it.
Externalise the past and internalise understanding.
And that's just so therapeutic, is it?
Yeah. At the end of the 9 months direct work, I will go away then, and they know I'm going to write their book, and I call them editor-in-chief. So I'll write a life story book, but not like you've seen with pictures of where they lived and things. It's usually what they've agreed we can include from the wallpaper, what they've agreed we can include from the information and the conversations we've talked about. So it consolidates all that work really, and then they edit it. If they want to make any changes. So that's a really good way of bringing it all together at the end. And if they want, they can share that then with other people and professionals.
So this work with children and young people that you do, sounds amazing. And it sounds like most people or children or young people will come into it and, be really keen and want to make progress. Does that always happen?
No, it's not right for everybody.
What happens when somebody maybe doesn't want to engage? What do you do?
Well, there's lots of ways we can still help by building gathering all the information in the information bank. It's helped with one young person's diagnosis of autism. It's helped professionals around him to have a snapshot view of what has happened in his past, because social workers don't have the time to read. There's changes in social work, and they don't have the time to read every bit of information. If I can collate all that together and form a chronology of events, that's really helpful. We can use therapeutic stories. So I will, if the young people are not wanting to engage in the direct work, we can still use the information and talk to the carers to develop a storybook for them that's about them, but using a character of their choice. So it's not, doesn't seem, that takes away the pain of seeing them in the middle of those situations, but it helps with their understanding around it.
Okay. So you work with a child for, as you say, 9 to 12 months, is it? And maybe that child is in a foster placement at that time. What sort of positive impact does that have on the fostering family and the foster carers really from their perspective. How does it help? What difference do they see?
Well, they see a lot more settled, settled at home. It improves relationships. We do the direct work with families that are in a settled placement because the child, when they're hearing all this information, needs to have a secure base because it's difficult things, difficult stuff that they're working through. So it's already, a good relationship, but I can't tell you how much the relationship's improved even further from doing the work. It helps the foster carers understanding. One foster carer said in a session that, but I treat you like I've treated our son, and he was the young person was able to say, but it's not the same. And for the foster carer to understand that with no judgment, with no shame, just with love and nurture, and to talk about these relationships is really important. And also, at 15 and 16, playing Jenga and Uno, just going back to the play as well, introducing play and joy back into, shared sense of joy back into the lives is just, it's really valuable.
So we've been talking a lot about fostering communities, basically the support that a foster carer has all around them. You're part of that, really, aren't you? Mm-hmm. You're part of that support. So, how does it feel to do that?
It's such a privilege.
Yeah,
it's such a privilege. And working as a therapeutic life story worker within a fostering agency, I feel even more privileged because I get to see the journey progress. I don't just walk away as an independent and not know how it's been how the work has affected the young people. I see it. I speak to the foster carers ongoing. And I see that work, and it's just great. And then we get to network. So if another family is referred and they're a little bit unsure, the family that have already experienced the work can then be mentors and talk to them. So it's a real great family kind of community.
That's the community, isn't it? Everybody supporting and helping each other. Yeah. So we've talked a lot about, obviously your work with children and young people, particularly in foster care. But can this work be done with adults?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that the next phase of therapeutic life story work is focused on adults. I'm about to do a course. I've had adults that have approached me and asked me to do life story work with them. When I've had one foster carer tell me it was like therapy for her as well.
Yeah.
Because the difficulty for my part is working one-to-one with a child is really easy, but when you have to include another person, that person's experiences, their personality and experiences of trauma in their past also comes into play, so you get to know that and work with that as well.
Yeah, and we use the word trauma, and sometimes your mind jumps to big, terrible, obvious things that have happened to people. But actually, it can come in all shapes and sizes, can't it?
Yeah.
And it can be things that maybe have happened in your past that you've never really given any attention to. Maybe you've minimized them. Maybe you don't think that they're that significant. Do you find that people realize that experiences that they've had are more significant than they thought they were?
Oh, absolutely. Doing this work has made me really conscious of my own journey, my own past with traumas. You can be in year 6, the end of primary school, and turn up to to be on the stage to a play that you practice for, and you see all the parents, there, and you freeze, and that feeling of dread and will stay with you, and it might not come and resurface until you walk into a university lecture hall and you see all those people again, or you're about to make a presentation. When I went to university, the first time I had to do a presentation was just nerve-wracking. I hadn't realised how much it would affect me, and it almost stopped me from continuing. So, Yeah, it's really important to have awareness.
Yeah. So how did you deal with that? Did you do some sort of work yourself to sort of, to work through it?
Yeah, I had really good people around me, a good mentor at university that I could speak to and talk to about it. And he just, gave me lots of support, and journaling helped as well. Journaling has always been a good thing for me to do, and lots of walk and relaxation, and not to rush and don't turn up late. So just to the breathing exercises. So all this I do talk about with carers when I'm doing the work, to relate my experiences, and then so that's how conversations develop and they gain trust.
Yeah, so we can't underestimate the power really of sort of taking things out of your brain, whether it's journaling, whether it's talking to a counsellor, whether it's doing your therapeutic life story work, just getting it all out, looking at it and understanding it, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and the power of doing that with foster carers during the session as well. Obviously they're not going to talk about extreme traumas when they're sat down with a child, but when they're talking about their past experiences and how it's affected them, sharing that and writing it out on the wallpaper and stuff. We do a activity called the behaviour tree, which is well known in substance support, substance abuse when for recovery, but with dealing with trauma, we write down behaviours, positive and negative behaviours on the leaves on the trees, and then we draw the roots, and we draw the things that have happened, the past experiences, again positive and negative, and then we connect the roots to the trees, and then you can see then how and that's how you raise awareness of these behaviours, because the children always come up with the most negative behaviours. It's the foster carers that remind them of some of the positive behaviours as well, and we talk about what's helpful and what's not helpful. Why some of those behaviours have formed because of to cope with some of the traumas that have happened before. And the same with the carers, they can do that for themselves as well. And when we do it side by side, it's really powerful.
Yeah. And some of these traumas that we experience as children sometimes can be things that we don't even remember, can't they? Because the brain sort of absorbs, what age is it that your brain sort of absorbs the most, and you don't even really realise it when you're younger?
I mean, from 0 to 2, those your brain is developing at the fastest pace, and you're taking on all the environment, all the your template for relationships, and although you don't have those memories, if it's been chaotic, if it's been abusive, if your experience has been neglectful, then the body will remember. That the body keeps a score. The famous book. So behaviours, sometimes we don't understand where certain behaviours, aggression or them kind of trauma responses, we don't know where they've come from. But when we look at brain development, and I do brain development with the children as well. I show them how that can affect, how their experiences can affect their brain development, and that's always quite sad. But then what we focus on, because we talk about the fight, flight and freeze, the limbic, the limbic part of the brain, which is, and I explain that when they're in a stressful situation, they will act automatically because of those memories that, because of that, those experiences that they don't always remember, but the brain does and the body does. So then we talk about the superpower, which is, neuroplasticity. So the synapses can go on developing and making changes right up until death. So, we can change some of these habits once we have awareness, once we know. That's why it's really important to talk about the past and experiences. But I have to say that, we don't, although I find out all the information so that I have a clear understanding, and sometimes we do say everything that's happened if we think that the child's capable of understanding and holding that information. But we only tell them what they think, what they need to know, what would be helpful to know, what would be helpful to understand.
Yeah. Wow, it's so fascinating, isn't it? That I think sometimes we just don't really think about how our past really affects our present and then in turn our future, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Understanding the past helps you think positively about the future. And towards the end of the sessions, that's what we do focus on, is the future. And, you know, we do exercises where we look at, you know, what they think about, what they want to achieve in the future, and we identify who can help, what they can do, how other people can help. And that's a really important exercise, you know, as you're coming towards the end, for them to feel hopeful and positive.
Yeah. So you can tell, Linda, you're so passionate about this. Like, can you ever imagine yourself doing anything different, or is this your life's work now?
No, I do lots of different things at, where I work at Alpha Plus Fostering. I do, you know, but this is the thing that I'm most passionate about. Yeah.
And what is it that inspires you to keep going with this work? Because I imagine it's quite challenging at times.
It is quite challenging. It's, you know, there's lots of difficult information that you come across and you have to talk about. But just when you have a breakthrough, when I've talked with a young person about domestic violence, and I talk about the situation that, you know, the power and control struggle within that, and I see the relationship, I see the understanding he now has with his mum, about his mum, and the comfort that that's brought to him, you know, that is worth. You know, I can't put that into words, what that is worth. And when I see them then going on to, you know, have positive outcomes and just enjoy life. Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to us today, Linda. You're so inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you've been inspired by Linda and you want to find out more about fostering in general, please do go to our website, nfa.co.uk.